we have a people with lived experience roundtable with Judie Birns, manager of the Drug Treatment Court of Regina. Meagan Jasper, the Drug Treatment Court, issues Drug Treatment Court alumni. Meagan grew up in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. She comes from a good family, no addictions history. At 14, she started using drugs, participating in risky behavior, and at age 16 was arrested for the first time. This would be the beginning of years-long battle with addictions, incarceration, and risky behavior. In 2017, she entered for the first time Regina Drug Treatment Court. She had never even thought about going to detox or treatment. She'd never seen addictions counselor. Jails are always a detox. Once I pick up, I don't stop until I'm incarcerated. Although I didn't have any childhood trauma, once I started using, my trauma came with that lifestyle. Regina Drug Treatment Court gave me an opportunity that I'd never had or even thought I needed. Once entering the program, I was immediately connected with an addictions counselor. Through her and the MRT program, I was able to change my thinking. I learned accountability and how to see the role I played in things I used to think I was a victim of. I owe my life to Drug Treatment Court and MRT. Today, I have over 5 years clean from alcohol and drugs, have not relapsed once since entering the program in 2017. I graduated in December 2018. I attended university where I received my business certificate. I now reside in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. I work at the John Howard Society, where I'm able to work on the front lines of the current addictions crisis, as well as being an advocate for harm reduction. I have also become a family partner of Saskatchewan Health Authority to work towards changing policies to better represent people with addictions in the treatment field. I have also shared my story in 2 documentaries, Stop Messing Around and The Beast Inside My Head. RDTC has given me a life I didn't think I could ever have or even want. Today, I am trusted and reliable. I have relationships with my family. I've become a valuable member of society. I am living proof that an addict can find recovery. Wow, awesome. Also, in this group, around the round table of lived experience is Nikoleta Curcin. She's also Drug Treatment Court alumni. She graduated from the University of Toronto in 2012 with an honors BA degree in English literature. She is also a graduate of Toronto's Drug Treatment Court program. Upon becoming an alumni of the program in December 2020, she started volunteering with Right On, a prisoner rights organization that seeks to empower incarcerated individuals through information and knowledge sharing. Wow. Nikoleta is a peer consultant on the Cannabis and Drug Treatment Courts in Ontario research project with CMHA Ontario and John Howard Society Ontario, and a peer researcher with the MAP Justice and Equity Lab at St. Michael's Hospital. As a speaker and a person with lived experience, she brings a unique perspective on the sources of trauma inherent in the criminal justice system, as experienced by the criminalized population and advocates for therapeutic alternatives to incarceration. Also on this team, the round table, is Melissa Duck. She's also Drug Treatment Court alumni. Melissa is alumni Drug Treatment Court at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. After a long battle with drugs, she graduated the program in July 2019, has been sober for nearly 5 years. Melissa faced many obstacles throughout her addiction, such as incarceration, homelessness, spousal abuse, and having to place her firstborn son up for adoption. She overcame each obstacle one step at a time, and Drug Treatment Court gave her the opportunity to do so. In January 2021, she started a program at George Brown College called Transitions to Post-Secondary Education and graduated with honors in August of 2021. In 2022, Melissa gave birth to her second son and has spent the last year raising him with her partner, who is also an alumni of the Toronto Drug Treatment Court program. They are expecting their 3rd child in May of 2023. Congratulations. Melissa has obtained so many of the goals she has set for herself and continues to work with Drug Treatment Court to maintain being the best version of herself. Absolutely. Wow. Welcome to the round table of lived experience people.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone here today. Melissa, I'm happy you're here. The baby didn't decide to come early. We had some worries about whether or not Melissa would even make it to the panel because the baby is due any moment. So we're going to do a roundtable with our panel, talk about barriers, challenges, successes, and best practices. So how can DTCs improve? what are we doing that we could look at changing and get it from the people that get the services from us. So it's a great opportunity to look at quality improvement from service received by participants. So first question we'll go to is, what are the barriers that you see? And we didn't really decide who's going to talk about what first. So whoever jumps in first can go, and then the others can add in. So barriers to drug court when you were getting into drug court.
I can go first. I think if we look at like when we're still sitting in jail waiting to get into drug court, I think there's a couple of things there, but the one that sticks out the most to me is housing. Here in Saskatchewan, you know, we're always in the paper about our income assistance not giving enough, and obviously we can't work when we come in. It's hard to even sign up for income assistance while you're incarcerated. So you have no income, you're getting out, and you need to find housing. If you don't have a place to go, like a family member, a friend, or sometimes those places are toxic, right? Those are the environments that got us sick or made us sick or kept us sick, you know? So trying to get into like a housing corporation, like a low income housing, is impossible while you're incarcerated. I always say this, the words safe and affordable are never in the same sentence when it comes to, you know, being on income assistance, because the housing that is safe, we can't afford. And the housing we can afford isn't safe. So, you know, when you're worrying about going home to people that are like still using, and then, you know, trying to stay clean throughout the night, like it shouldn't be a dangerous place that you're going to when you're not in drug court. And, you know, for me, I'm really grateful because Regina Drug Court, you know, for the females, we had Kate's Place. You know, it was in the hood of Regina, and, you know, it wasn't maybe safe outside the building, but at least in that building, we had, you know, something that we could afford, and, you know, it was doable, right? The men weren't so lucky. So I don't know if this is an issue with other drug courts, but I know, like, if we didn't have to stress out and worry about going home after drug court, it would make our treatment a lot easier, so that we could focus on what we're receiving.
Toronto, any comments on that?
Yeah, I also find housing to be a barrier when entering the program, because one, you may not have housing to go to. Also, I find that often for women, or in my experience, it's tied up with like intimate relationships. So maybe you're staying with a partner, or you know, homeless with a partner, and it's difficult to just separate yourself from that part of your life as you're entering the program. The relationship might be toxic. You may not be able to extricate yourself from it. And I find that, yeah, needing to have stable housing, which for many people is inaccessible, is an unrealistic expectation and a barrier to entering.
Okay. Anyone else have another barrier they want to bring up?
I can bring up a barrier.
Okay.
So one of the things that I feel is a barrier is that DTC doesn't have enough partnerships within the community and within the jails. So for example, when women are released to go to court, we are not given like Suboxone or methadone. So we are sitting all day without getting medication that we need. And if we're released from jail, then we're basically going into the streets without any opioid replacement, which in turn usually leads to relapse or to overdoses, depending how long a person's been in jail for. But the men in Toronto, they get their methadone and Suboxone before they leave for court. So I think that's a huge barrier. And I feel like if DTC had maybe like a doctor or a pharmacy in the community that clients could go to as soon as they're released from custody to get all that stuff sorted out would be very beneficial. As well as it's not just like the methadone and Suboxone. People are on antidepressants or antipsychotics. And if you're taking it in jail regularly and then coming out and not having access to it, that's a huge issue for mental health and physical health. And I also know from like the team's standpoint of view that it's not always so easy to get in touch with like the jail's medical staff or social workers, which makes it extremely difficult for clients to get their medication. So I feel like if we could build like some sort of bridge to have more access to the staff at the jail or doctors in the community, that would be super helpful for clients.
Okay. Anyone else?
I
Okay.
just want to add to what she said, like that's, I 100% agree. That's one of my challenges is, like with this fentanyl crisis and opiate crisis that's going on right now, you're seeing more and more, and they're coming in younger. And, even in Regina, we've lost a few participants. So I guess what is all of the drug courts going to do for harm reduction? Like, does this involve Narcan and naloxone training? Like as soon as, people are staff members trained, are people being given kits as soon as they get out? Because, we got to keep people alive long enough so that they can access this treatment. And like how she just said that men are being able to get onto their methadone, Suboxone, whatever, and the females aren't. Like, so there, maybe better communication amongst, I know in Regina, we used to have a doctor, but I don't think we do anymore, that used to come and visit us. I'm not sure. I know when I was there, I was lucky enough to be able to go and see him, but yeah, we got to keep people alive. So there's not, they don't have the option of going to treatment.
Just to also add on the same topic, not just like when you're leaving the jail to go to court and getting your dose, but when you go into jail, if you're not already on methadone or Suboxone, they're not going to give it to you unless they know like you're already sentenced and you're going to be there for a while. So if you're spending, a few days, a week, a month, whatever, until you get bailed out again, you're not receiving treatment. So if the DTCs could somehow partner with the doctors or social workers or whoever, as Melissa mentioned, to get people who are in the program, so clearly they have the addiction issues that the treatment team knows of, can communicate this to the doctor at the jail so that they can be given medication. Because I know in my own experience, like I was in withdrawal, and as soon as I got out, the first thing I did was purchase fentanyl. And so, yeah, it was definitely a challenge, to say the least.
Okay, the next section would be challenges. So not just a barrier, but something that's there, but is still challenging for you while in drug court. Can you give me some examples of that? Nikoleta's nodding her head, so go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So this actually like sort of goes to both barrier and challenge, because having to enter a guilty plea. I think that's problematic, especially because by that time you may have a multitude of charges, and some of them are probably legitimate, and then some may not be. So I think, and of course it's going to result in a criminal record. I also think like there was, not just with me, but like people in the program told me the same thing. It wasn't clear that you would have a criminal record after the programs. There was some sort of assumption that like if you completed the program successfully, you would not have a record. So I think that is, challenging not only while you're in the program, but after for a long time. And also we did touch on housing. Also there were, when I first started, there was a group that all the women had to attend. It was outside of the DTC. It was in the community. And occurred 5 times a week, from like, I don't know, I think 9 a.m. to 4 or 8 to 4, something like that. And one of their requirements was that you had to be sober for 24 hours prior to joining the group. But I had just entered the program. I was in active addiction. I could not be sober for 24 hours because I would be very ill. And it was just an unrealistic expectation. I did not complete the group. They ended up, kicking me out because I kept sort of like falling asleep or whatever, nodding out. So I did not complete the group. And because there are significantly less women in the Toronto DTC, there weren't as many other options for groups for women. The men had regular groups. I think it's like 3 times a week. And we maybe sometimes had it once a week, but usually not, just because there weren't enough participants. So that was a major challenge.
Melissa, did you find that as well?
Yeah, for sure. We have I think when Nikoleta and I were in the program, there was maybe like 5 or not even five women in the program. And I believe I know what program she was talking about the 9 to 4, which kind of brings me to one of the challenges that I think is, yes, we need equality in the programs, but we also need equity. Everybody has their own individual needs. So I feel like if DTC and like some of the other programs that we have to participate in to continue with DTC looked at both equality and equity and kind of combined it more together, I think we would have maybe a higher success rate. And then also to piggyback off of what Nikoleta was saying about like pleading and not knowing all the details before going into drug treatment court. I feel like it would be really beneficial if there was like more education or more promotion within the jails about DTC, because there's so many, especially with the women, there's so much stigma and fear about going into a program like that. A lot of women have children, and then they're in turn afraid that like CAS is going to get involved and they're going to lose their kids. So I feel like if maybe one of the staff members from DTC could like facilitate a group in the jail to like talk about exactly what DTC is and how they can help and kind of eliminate that stigma and fear amongst the women, I think it would be super beneficial.
That's a good idea. Awesome. Okay, any other challenges?
I have another thing just to add, because I have this under my barriers, but you know what, like I don't know how the other drug courts work, but I know in Regina here, we don't take people like there's certain criteria you have to meet just in order to be able to attend it. And one of those things is about the weapons charges. And for me, like, I don't know, for me, I carried all the time. I carried weapons all the time. I'm just grateful that I was only caught with a knife and they were able to drop that for me to go into drug court. Otherwise I wouldn't be here today. I think that I don't know what would have to change, like if there'd have to be like a security guard or what there would have to be. But I feel like that at least here in Saskatchewan, most of the people that are being charged with drug charges right now are carrying weapons. And, you know, just because of where I work, I see it, I'm in the court slots, I see it all the time. And these people aren't qualifying for drug court because they had a gun on them or they had, you know, a knife on them. But I can tell you from my past experience that I'm just very grateful that I was not caught with what I usually carried. Otherwise I would not be sitting here today. So.
Okay.
Sorry, can I kind of piggyback off of Meagan as well?
Yes.
So another criteria like to get into the program for myself that was like a barrier and a challenge was my co-accused, who was also my partner, was in the program before I got into the program. And it took about 4 months for me to get accepted into the program. And usually they don't allow co-accused or partners or family into the program together. And luckily they took a chance on us and we definitely gave them a run for their money. But I think that it would be beneficial. Like, it's not fair that they choose to help one person, but because two people have been charged together, the other people can't get the same help that they need. So like, I know there's a lot of confidentiality issues and, things like that. But I feel like from two people that have graduated the program and done it successfully together, I think that it's an opportunity that the court team should definitely open up to more people.
Can I ask, Melissa, was there any couples counseling done with you as a couple while you were there, or was it both individual?
I think it was more individual than couples. Like I said, the confidentiality stuff really is tricky for like the therapist as well as like the court team. I don't know how they did it, but they were able to do it for us. And I would love to see more couples, because if you can, so to speak, kill two birds with one stone, and get people clean and sober and have that support together, it's a phenomenal experience.
Great. Okay. Okay, is there any other barriers or challenges, or are we going to move on to successes and best practices? Go ahead, Nikoleta. You look like you wanted to say something.
So once again, I'm just going to mention housing. I think is really, we touched on this. I think it's really problematic for people to, from a place of not having housing, actually meet the requirements of the program, like showing up to court twice a week, going to see your therapist. It's really difficult to do that without a base level of stability. But also in relation to that, the executive functioning impairments that may be that people with active addiction may be suffering from at the time. I think just some more understanding around that. So like showing up to places, coming to places on time, all those sort of things I think are very problematic if not only if you're in active addiction and don't have some form of stability in your existence, but also people come in with traumatic brain injuries, with histories of violence that have impaired their cognitive functioning, and a myriad of other issues. So sometimes I think that expectations need to be really individualized and come from a place of compassion and trying to serve and help the individual, as opposed to having a more sort of broad set of rules.
The cookie cutter approach doesn't work, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. It's not easy when you start. Your hair's not clear. You're not used to structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have that issue? Okay. Move on to something else then. Somebody tell me another success. What worked really well in drug court for you?
I can talk about, I don't know if Toronto does it. Like, I don't know if you guys have the moral recognition therapy books, like the MRT books. If it wasn't for MRT, I wouldn't be here today. Like, it changed my thinking. I used to always think I was the victim. I had really bad things happen to me while I was using. And, when you say the word, when you're sexually abused, you always think that you're the victim, right? And it gave me the right to hurt everybody around me because I was the victim. And I worked with a counselor, and I worked with a whole team of counselors at drug court, but it wasn't until I did MRT that I finally stopped using victim statements and stopped blaming everybody around me and started to see the role I played in my circumstances. And, it also, not only that, so that helped me, change my thinking, but then the biggest part was the goal setting, right? Because after drug court, it's all about goal setting and what you're going to do afterwards, and, working towards a better, healthy life, and not falling back into that old trap. And if it wasn't for MRT, there's no way I would have been able to, today I work on the front lines, and I see my drug of choice. I see people, I see all these triggers, and people are always saying, like, how can you do that job? Like, how are you able to not, want to relapse. And I don't, because MRT has given me, a different way of thinking today. My first thought isn't wrong all the time anymore, like it used to be. Which wasn't that long ago, but
Okay, good.
What does MRT stand for?
am I saying it right, Judy? It's moral recognition therapy, right?
Moral recognition therapy, yeah.
I can give you the definition. MRT is I wrote it down because I love MRT. MRT is an effective, systematic, cognitive behavioral approach that treats a wide range of issues, including substance abuse, domestic violence, trauma, parenting, job skills, and other issues. And so they have like little work, like we did the Escaping Your Prison, I believe, booklet. And now they've implemented, like that was when I was in drug court, they've implemented other books. But I can even say, because before I was in drug court, I dated somebody in drug court, and the MRT books weren't there. And, all that whole group of friends that he had, most of them went back out. And I feel like they went back out, like they stayed clean, they graduated, but they went back out later on. And I feel like MRT is the reason why we have so many grads being successful today, because we've learned to live, we've learned to change our thinking, because addiction is, it's a disease of the thinking. So yeah, and it taught me how to pick healthy role models, like I remember in the first, I think it was step 3 or 4, where you have to pick a role model and why they're your role model. And, and when I looked at that book and I looked at my role model, it was all based on like ego, money, and, fancy cars, and a big shot house. And, and then when I picked when I got to step, after I did the goal setting and all that, and then I picked my next role model, and it had completely changed. So it just shows my thinking, how it changed in a few weeks. My next role model, it was because she was a woman that was empowering, and she showed strength, and it was completely different from, the last time I had done that exercise, which just really shows that I changed my thinking.
Went from material things to other things.
Yeah. And then I wanted to, stand up for women's rights and beliefs and things like that. And, what really, because I'm always looking at MRT stuff, and, what it kind of goes in, yeah, we're on successes, but I would like to see, some of these other books implemented, like, especially like parenting one, like Toronto, if you guys are struggling with groups for women, like starting an MRT group that's based around like trauma and parenting. Like I would love to take the parenting one. I'd like to take the domestic violence one, because even though my domestic violence relationship was years ago, and I feel like I worked on it with my counselor, there's always, I would just love to take it. There's always things that, triggers that come up, PTSD comes up, and I think that would really help me.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we do MRT in Toronto, maybe for like the last, I don't know if it's like 6 weeks in the program that you do it just before you graduate or complete the program. But like most of the groups that we do, I think are based more in CBT, which, is helpful as well. For me personally, I did participate in the groups that had more of a CBT basis, but I also did an outside group that was DBT, and that's what I found like very helpful for me personally. So yeah, I think all of these modalities, it's finding which modality works for each individual. And I think it's important to have a myriad of options available, both with the treatment team and in the community.
You're looking at individualized treatment plans and not a cookie cutter approach is sort of the message you're giving.
Yeah.
Okay. What else did you find that worked for you in drug court?
So I think Nikoleta kind of touched on it. It may have been hard at the beginning with having like regimented schedules, like meeting with your counselor on certain days and doing groups on certain days and having court. But for me, that really worked. I was by myself. My partner was incarcerated. So having like those schedules and things like that really helped take my mind off of like when I'm going to get my next fix. And it also like it gave me a purpose to wake up in the morning, be like, okay, I have to be somewhere and I want to be on time and things like that. And I think without having that scheduled routine in my life at the beginning, I don't think I would have done as well as I did. So I think that was very successful to have, or like it's a good thing to have in the program. And
about-
also, sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Judy.
No, go ahead.
Also like they the DTC, they also help with like getting on Ontario Works and Ontario Disability. They also know like all the ins and outs, or where you can get like a legitimate job. A lot of people have criminal records, so we can't get hired, but they know places where you can go and you can volunteer, or you can get work, or you can do school, things like that. So those are, I think, another huge success of DTC.
Yeah, the more resources in the community, the better, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Megan?
Yeah, just to kind of add there too, I do have about the structure written down. The structure, drug court, the structure was really hard to adapt to. I'll tell you that. But once I did, it prepared me to be successful after drug court. It taught me how to be on time. I know I like to be late. I hated giving up my fish bowls for my lates, but you know, today I'm not late when I go to work. I'm early. You know, so it taught me those things. And one thing too is like the wraparound services, just because I'm always advocating about this too now, is that I think drug court, why it works so well for me is that if I would have been at drug court and they're like, okay, you have a probation officer meeting, you need to walk 6 blocks over there. I mean, so in those 6 blocks are very dangerous, because if I'm walking those 6 blocks, who am I meeting along the way? Who am I seeing along the way? Is there, you know, a liquor store along the way, a pot shop nowadays along the way? So having all that stuff, like our drug court we had a doctor, we had a nurse, we had a social worker. As soon as you get out, you have a social worker. I think she came every 2 weeks. We had, you know, the addictions counselors are there. So there was the probation officer was there. So I didn't have to leave very often, you know, it was just to go home. And then in the evenings we had, you know, NAA, 12-step programming, whatever you wanted to do, that was your choice. But yeah, I really believe that wraparound service was so key, and not having to like try to make it to appointments when you don't have transportation, right? It's very, very cold here in the winter, right? So if you're walking 6-8 blocks, like the odds of me detouring somewhere else is pretty high, especially in those first few months.
Yeah, that's a challenge no one brought up, was transportation, right?
Yeah.
Did you have an easy time getting around to all your appointments, or how did that work?
Well, that's in one of my ideas for like best practices is
Okay.
Toronto DTC provides, they give you food if you need food. If you're coming into the CAMH building, like one of the staff members is going to get you some food, get some food in your belly. There's coffee, there's drinks. If you need food to take home, they have gift cards to provide for you. They also have, I don't think bus tokens anymore, because I don't think tokens exist down here anymore, but like they have like money for transportation, and yeah, I think that's like clothing. They offer so many like good things that people need. We have like a place called Gifts of Light, where our peer support worker gets many donations, and you know, if someone needs socks or anything like that, our team there is like right on it, and they get you what you need, which I think is really one of their best practices.
Okay.
Just if I may, jumping off what Megan was saying in the beginning about structure. So obviously for a lot of people, it is very beneficial. For me, I struggled with it like the entire time. And actually, even after I completed the program, it's only like very recently in the last few months that I finally managed to be on time to places, and like to, I don't know, sleep a reasonable amount of time and wake up at a all that like normal stuff. And I think so one of the things that is great about these courts is that they treat concurrent disorders. So, if you have ADHD or depression or borderline or whatever it is, that's going to impact how capable you are of doing things that seem normal, even if you're not using. So so that was very helpful. There is a psychiatrist that you can see, and basically so much is available. So many like mental health professionals are available to you. And of course, it takes time to treat mental illnesses. You may have to try different medications and a variety of other individual differences with that. So hence, it may take a long time, but they are there to assist you with that other massive aspect of your life that is probably also a contributing factor to your addiction, because I think a lot of it is also self-medication, both for trauma and mental health and so on.
Right. Well, congratulations on getting that set up now.
Yeah, apparently it took me going to Europe and like changing the time zone that I was living in, and then coming
reset.
back. And it was like, wow, now my entire world is finally like aligned with this time zone.
That's awesome.
I
We
have
should totally go ahead.
Judy, can I add something? She just made me think of something. Also too, like I didn't struggle with this, but my partner went to a drug court in Moose Jaw, and he really struggled. He can't read. He's illiterate. He's dyslexic. He has ADHD. He can't sit still, and it was very difficult for him to do the workbooks, even to sit still and write his smiley in the morning, right? Like we had to do this little check-in thing, and it was very difficult for him. And Judy, you probably remember, because we came down to help out that drug court, and it was like once I read things to him, like read the questions, and he was able to participate. But yeah, I think that's where the cookie cutter thing don't work, right? Because some people have disabilities where they can't, and maybe they're like, he's ashamed of his, right? So he doesn't like to tell you that he can't read. He doesn't want to tell you that he's dyslexic. He doesn't want to he's been signaled his whole life out for his ADHD, been kicked out of schools, things like that. So he's not going to tell you that. But I think that's where the communication and having a doctor and having a medical team in that can pick up on those things, so it doesn't have to be announced to the whole program, like to all the other peers that are there, especially if there's a lot of shame being felt already.
Right.
And a lot of trauma from it too.
Okay, we've got about 20 minutes, I think, left. So maybe we should move on to the last piece, which would be the best practices. So let's hear from you guys on what you think drug courts should be doing best practice wise. Go.
I have lots, so I don't know. Do you want me to go first?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, well, I have one of the big things for me is that I felt, this is just a program recommendation, that track 3, I felt like it's the least planned track. I don't know if the other drug courts go by tracks, but we have track 1, we have assessment phase 1, 2, and 3. And I feel like track 3 was such a rush. Okay, here's your extended curfew, you don't have to come to program, kind of goodbye, right? And then the after drug court, right? Like what happens after drug court? I remember my probation officer telling me I was just about to go into track 3, and she said, you're not going to track 3 unless you get a job or go to school. And I already had my grade 12. So, I was like, okay, well, I was taught enough in the first 2 tracks that I knew if I went back to working in the bar and hospitality industry, that I would end up using again, because drugs are so much there. So I knew I had to go to school, but I didn't know what to go to school, and I had no guidance on that. We did have like that work prep place at the time that I went there, but all they did was resume building, and I already had a resume. So I needed more direction with going to school. And so my program recommendation would be kind of like a peer support program, having participants, past graduate participants that are doing well and that are in the workforce, coming back, and maybe like a career day, and like talking to us or partnering up and saying, you know, I would have loved to hear about how somebody applied to school. You know, how did you get past the barrier of having such a huge gap in your resume? How do you get past the barrier of having a criminal record? Where can you apply? What do you say in a job interview? Going to university, like, do I say I have a disability? You know, it would have been really nice to have those things. You know, peer support is so important to me today. I get so much from my peers. And I feel like if I would have had that in track 3 a little bit more from past participants, it would have been, you know, that journey. I ended up taking a business certificate that I have no use for today. You know, like I work where I work, addictions counseling, or, you know, something like that would have been more beneficial to what I do today. But I felt so rushed into going into school. So now I have a huge student loan and I do not use my business certificate for anything.
Good point.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that that's a fantastic idea. Having like more direction and also individualized direction about like work and school. Because I mean, I feel like they're pretty sort of standard choices, and the assistants, I've been to lots of those like career places, and they're like, okay, do this for your resume, or like, oh, if you're going to apply to university, this is like how you do it, like in concept. And I find it all like really confusing. Plus, like the deadlines for university is like, so anyway, so yeah, having people come in that could assist you in some way, whether it's just talking or something like a little more direct, that aligns with what you see yourself doing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and
idea.
I think too, a lot of those work prep places, like they don't have criminal records. They don't know what it's like to walk into a university and feel like you have junkie written on your forehead. And so like that was like, I had no confidence. Like I went in, I'm taking accounting, and, you know, and I'm getting 90s on my test, yet I felt like I was the biggest idiot in the room. Like I felt so stupid. I felt like I was a junkie that everybody knew. And then I had nobody to, like, I talked to my sponsor about it. I talked to my counselor about it, but nobody really understood because they hadn't, I needed somebody who had gone through this. Like I needed a peer that had the same kind of story as me, who had lived experience, and, you know, not just somebody who had gone to university without that, but that didn't feel that way. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Makes sense. Yes.
yeah.
Okay,
And then
Heather?
I guess too, just to add to that too, is that even for after, sorry guys, after you graduate, when you're that first year, when I graduated, that first year after is so like, I don't know, like the voice was back in my head telling me I could pick up and no one would know. I'd moved to another city. Like I feel like that's when I needed more support than I did maybe in track 2. But and I feel like there really is nothing for that. And this is where I would like going back to MRT, it would be really cool if we could have that as an option, especially now that I hear that drug court has implemented new books in, and I would love to take those books. However, there's, you know, to do MRT, the people actually have to be, there needs to be 2 people trained, I believe. And so you can't just go and buy the book and do it yourself. Like you have to be in a peer support group. So to have that offered would be amazing. Especially like my sister's kids were apprehended and placed in my care, and I've never had kids before. I don't know what I'm doing. And so when I seen that they have a parenting one, I would have loved to do that.
We'll get you set up, Megan. We can do that.
Okay.
Can I just kind of touch on Megan? I had a different experience with after completing DTC in Toronto. I feel like it's a long-term thing. There's so many programs and stuff that offer like maybe 6 weeks of counseling or therapy. But with DTC in Toronto, like they're there for you for life if you want it. I'm 5 years out of the program, or 4.5 years out of the program, and I still do counseling or therapy every week. And I still go in and visit, and if I wanted to attend like the groups and stuff, like they have like an open door policy. So yeah, that was a very different experience for me here in Toronto. But yeah, I think that's one of their best practices, as well as our GTC program down here. Their slogans, so to speak, is stay connected. And they really follow through with that. If you reach out, someone's always going to get back to you and always going to like try and support you and whatever you need. So
Yeah, I just want to agree with Melissa. I had the same experience with Toronto. Like I still talk to them, and I think it's been like 3 years since I've been out of the program. And like I called my therapist from Europe. I was like, I'm depressed. So anyway, yeah, like they're extremely supportive long term, and I really greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, like I know Regina, like we're always welcome back. We can always come pop in. Like I know Judy's always posting pictures of grads popping in. I guess where the confusion is that I moved, right? I moved an hour away. And so it's not as easy for me to go back. So if I knew that there was group programming, then I can make that a part of like a regular thing. Or, you know, like I know one of the treatment centers here, after you leave, they do a Zoom thing. They have a Zoom check-in thing, and they do it at 11 a.m. every morning. So if you can pop on, like I could come today and not come for 2 weeks, right? But I know it's always going to be at 11 a.m. So I think to see something more like that for us guys that do, like, obviously Saskatchewan, we don't have many drug courts. So I'm not even from Regina, yet I had to attend that one. I was arrested in Saskatoon. I'm from Yorkton. There, you know, it wasn't offered in the cities that I, you know, resided in at that time. And so I had to go to another city, but when I graduated, then I went to a different place. So, which is the story for quite a few people. So how can we stay connected if we're not in Regina?
That's always a challenge, yes.
Yeah.
I like the idea of the Zoom thing though. That would be it's much easier to like get up and know that you have like a Zoom appointment or a Zoom, there's like a Zoom meeting at like 10 o'clock, and you know, even if you're not in Regina or whatever, you could still attend. I think that's maybe having more of those, implementing more WebEx or Zoom meetings would be really beneficial to some people.
One good thing that came out of COVID, right? We figured out how to
100%.
do that. Okay. How about I throw out one last question? You guys can answer it for me. If you were running drug court for a day, what's one thing you'd change? Everybody give me an idea.
Too many ideas. Oh my God, which one to focus on? Oh my gosh. Having like specific trauma programs that like not just like rehab and this and that. Like I actually ended up going to the women's inpatient unit. So which is not like somewhere they generally send you. And that was really helpful because I met with a psychiatrist once a week. I was there for just 3 weeks. COVID happened, but it gave me the tools to process trauma on my own when I went home. So that was, so not just being trauma informed, but having specific programs that deal with trauma.
Okay, good. Melissa, what would you do if you were boss for the day?
I wouldn't change anything. I'm so biased because they helped me so much, and like they went above and beyond of like the call of duty, and I'm just like so extremely grateful for them. I think their program is absolutely amazing, and yeah, I wouldn't I'd take the lead from somebody else because they do such a good job. So, yeah.
Meagan, you're me for the day. What would you do? I want to be you for the day. That's why I'm growing my hair out. My thing, I didn't get to talk about this, but the biggest thing that I would do, I love how we smudge in the morning at drug court. But I would like to see more cultural stuff. So I think that I would decolonize the courtroom. I know that we clap, but clapping isn't enough. We have so many people that have lost identity, and you know, with all this talk about stuff, I would like to see decolonized courtrooms and having a cultural liaison that could, you know, work with Indigenous people, because I feel like they they have to get their identity back, and that, how do we do that? How is that implemented into the treatment process? And I think that the cultural liaison, we were lucky enough to go to sweats. We were lucky enough to do those things. But if we had a cultural liaison that could work with those guys to work on their identity, because that's a major trauma piece that is missing in our drug court right now.
And continuing past graduation too, right? The community supports that you can connect to.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Can
we
I
have
throw
9
in one-
minutes left. Oh, sorry, Nikoleta.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, can I throw in something really, really quickly?
You sure can.
Okay,
You've got 9
great.
minutes, go.
A larger focus on like restorative justice practices as well to integrate into specialized courts. So that also like considering different types of sentences or practices that maybe result in no criminal records, or finding other alternatives to either incarceration or whatever form of punishment that, of the day.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Nikoleta. And like, I know that with our drug court, it was a 16-month program. So then there was people that had maybe their charges were only going to be a 6-month sentence, so they weren't able to attend. But if we could just adapt, like we don't want to do cookie cutter, right? So let's adapt the program. So this person's maybe only going to be there for, have like a different area where people with those lighter sentences. And then it could be like an alternate measures, right? Like it could be something where they don't end up with a criminal record after. And it would actually give them more reason to stay, because I know that a lot of people wanted to opt out, right? Like they'll go for 3-4 months, opt out, time served. But if you end up opting out, then you get the record. If you stay till the end, you don't get the record, and that might be enough initiative for people to actually to finish with those smaller sentences.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you very much, ladies. It's been nice spending time with you and meeting you from Toronto. I hope everything goes well, Melissa, with your baby. Let me know when.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'll send you an email.
All right. Thank you. So I don't know if anyone has any specific questions. We have 8 minutes left.
We have 2 questions in the chat.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you.
So I'll do the first and then you can answer, and then I'll do the second. So the first question is, what were the most meaningful incentives for you all? In Guelph, we do gift cards, extending or taking away curfews, skipping a week of court. We're always looking for more ideas.
I can tell you what ours was. We have fish bowls. I don't know if you guys have a fish bowl. So if you had 2 weeks of clean screens, not being late, I don't know, Judie could probably elaborate more on all the details that they did. You got to pick from a fish bowl, and it was like a gift card. It was like things that you said. And that thing that we all wanted was to get lunch with Judie, because it meant she was going to take you out for lunch. And I remember one time I got a gift card and I lied and said I got lunch with Judie, but then they realized. But it was knowing that, it's more than just having a lunch paid for you. It's knowing like somebody, and it would be cool if the judge would do it too, lunch with the judge, right? It's the fact that they would sit down and eat with us and have a conversation with us, that we're equal to them, that we're humans. So it's more than just a free lunch or a gift card.
Just so you know, Meagan, it is lunch now with the judge and Judie.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I think I deserve a fishbowl for being on this thing. So maybe I'll get it.
Anyone else want to answer that question? Did you have incentives that worked for you?
No, not for me personally. There were no incentives that I was particularly invested in. There was one sanction though that was personally helpful to me, and it was probably like the only one, which is I was given a writing assignment to do, and it took me a very, very long time to actually hand it in, and I came up with zillions of excuses, but that was very helpful to me and much more effective than like a typical sort of authoritarian sanction, because that just always makes me I don't know, like it repels me, and it doesn't make me feel like, I guess, internalizing labels, right? You're being punished. Okay, so you're this sort of person. You're basically, I think just in society, people do what you expect them to do. So if you sanction them, you're expecting that, you've done something bad, we're punishing you. So the person's going to continue that behavior. But yeah, the writing assignment, even though it was a sanction, it didn't feel like it because it gave me the time to process my own experience and just gave me insight into myself and the program.
So we can move on to the second question. Thank you for sharing your experiences and wisdom. I've learned a lot, and there are a number of wonderful ideas on how to improve the system. Is anyone on the panel open to speaking to the healthcare branch of Ontario's Ministry of Solicitor General's staff, healthcare in the jails and remand centers, to share their experiences and recommendations? So this is a comment question in terms of anyone here on the panel wanting to work with this division. I can copy and paste into whomever is willing to take up this.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to.
I'm willing to too, but I don't know if it would make a difference because I'm in Saskatchewan, so I was never incarcerated in Ontario, but I'm definitely, I already speak about the SHA and stuff like that, so.
I would be interested in doing something like that, but like Judy said, I'm having a baby in like 4 days. So if it works with my schedule, I'm totally up for it.
Way to go, girls. Good job. Any others, Lisa?
Nothing else at this time. I'm just asking the person who put forward the question in the chat if they would like to share their information so that everyone can connect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I think that's us. Good job, everyone. I really learned a lot. I took lots of notes. I was trying to look like I was watching the screen, but I was writing at the same time. I have pages of notes. So, because it's all about drug courts getting better, and I can only get better if I hear from people that use the service. So thank you for all your insight.
Can I ask a question quick? Melissa, when you're talking about Toronto, are you talking about Toronto Drug Treatment Court? Is that where you got all your help?
Yeah, Nikoleta and I both Toronto.
Oh, perfect. Oh, great.
Yeah.
They're our next event here, and so I needed to ask that. I wanted to make sure I'm thinking about the right one. That's super. Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. You were right on the money about all the lived experience and peer support stuff. That's the same list sort of that we've come up with the hard way through thinking and talking through trial and error. And so if we can see it on the bottom, the same from all across the country, and then we can keep passing that message to the people at the top, and they care enough to change it. We got the right recipe. The formula is correct. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Well, then